Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ringside Cinema. I am Money Mike, and yes, that right there was what you saw in the beginning was my reaction to Hangman Adam Page sticking that syringe into the mouth of Swerve Strickland, and yeah, that was kind of a ugh, moment. I look away. I do not like needles. But for a lot of fans, there's now a debate. Did AEW go too far? And, it's kind of crazy to me because I think it's that fine line where for so many years we've complained as fans, oh, WWE is too PG. And yes, there are times, or there were definitely times when WWE felt too PG, especially when you could watch other PG shows and see that, well, they were kind of doing stuff that were more, a little bit not PG, but it was still PG, but it was, you know, you get what I'm saying. And when we watched All Out this past Saturday, it was a great show. I enjoyed everything from the beginning to the end. I didn't really have no problems with any of the matches. But where a lot of people have problems is when at the end of the AEW World Title match between Bryan Danielson and Jack Perry, it seemed like, the BCC, the Blackpool Combat Club, came out to save Bryan Danielson from being cashed in on, only for it to be a major plot point in this whole Jon Moxley new storyline that he's doing as they turned their back on Bryan Danielson. And then we saw the image of Moxley putting a plastic bag over Bryan Danielson's head, thus suffocating him, so to speak. And yeah, the fans were chanting, this is, what's the word on YouTube everybody uses? He was unaliving. He was attempting to unalive Bryan Danielson by putting a plastic bag over his head. Then we saw the main event come, and boy oh boy, I think this is where a lot of people are having the debates, because boy oh boy, did Hangman and Swerve go too far? It's funny because I commented on Matt from Assemble. He asked if we thought it went too far, and shout out to Matt for using my comment in his video about this. I said, for years we've complained for WWE being too PG and we wanted violence, and AEW is now giving us what we've been wanting from WWE for so long, and how we all hated that it was PG, and we wanted the blood, the violence, and we're getting that from AEW. And then now there's this kind of, okay, you know what? This is too far. What is too far? Because to me, people have said for years, well, what about the Attitude Era? We want the Attitude Era back. We want the blood. We want violence. And yeah, listen, it's 2024. We're in a completely different time. We're completely different era. Obviously, there are things that I think as a society, from a standpoint, that there are things that you can and cannot do. Now, I'm not going to get into that whole aspect of things, but I think from a society perspective and where we are in 2024, I think there is that kind of battle between people where we're trying to figure out what is too far versus what's not too far, and it's an interesting debate. I will say that, because it would be like if the NFL said, "Hey, you know what? We hear you. We're not going to penalize roughing the passer no more. Linebackers, defensive linemen can sack the quarterback no matter however they want to. They can go in there, hard hits, whatever. We're not going to penalize it." But then the hard hits happen, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Then the fans start saying, hey, wait a minute. That's too hard. That's too much. You got to penalize roughing the passer again. And then the NFL is going to come to you, come to me, come to us, and go, well, wait a minute. You said you didn't want us to penalize roughing the passer, but now you want us to penalize him again. So, and I feel like that's where we are with wrestling, where as fans, we're trying to figure out, where is that fine line between not enough, between too much, just enough, or no, just enough, too much, and too far, or not enough, just enough, or too much. And that's kind of where we are with pro wrestling. Is AEW is providing us this alternative to WWE. We're not going to see this kind of stuff in WWE. Obviously, WWE is more story based. They tell the matches themselves tell stories, and they do it in a way where they don't need the extra violence, the blood, and yeah, in some cases it works. It works, and sometimes it don't, because there are times when maybe they should have done more. They should have had more violence for certain matches. People weren't happy with the stipulation of a strap match for CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, because they felt that rivalry deserved a better stipulation. And that's kind of what I said, on Matt's community tab. I said, hey, if Hangman and Swerve had went out there and just had a regular match, people would be saying that there wasn't enough violence for the story that they were telling. And I feel like that's kind of where I think wrestling companies, especially in 2024, you have to try to find that fine line of, how much can you get away with? And because we do live in such a different era now that, again, WWE can't do too much because they have sponsors, they're a publicly traded company, blah, blah, blah. AEW, meanwhile, they're 5 years in, and they're kind of in this little bubble of, they have their niche audience, they have their hardcore fans that are going to watch no matter what. But they also are in that same area where they have to grow their audience. And, we've talked about this before with the empty seats, not many people coming to Dynamite, but you see the full crowds coming to the pay-per-views. But it's like, how do you grow your audience and get people to Dynamite on Wednesday nights? How do you get people to Collision? How do you fill up these arenas? And when you're trying to grow, when you're a new company and you're trying to grow, you have to find that fine line of catering to your main audience, which wanted that alternative to WWE. WWE, when AEW started in 2019, they were not giving us, the blood, the violence, and people were like, hey, we want the Attitude Era back. And so AEW said, okay, we are going to give you blood, we're going to give you violence, just like the Attitude Era. Well, that's great, but also for a new company like AEW, they also have to find that fine line, especially from all the comments that I'm seeing, is there is that fine line of, are you also doing too much to turn away the fans and people that, maybe they watched AEW for the first time on Saturday and they were like, okay, cool, this is cool. They might see Osprey versus Pac and go, oh, I need to watch this more. They might see, um, you know, Danielson and Jack Perry. They might like that match. I know a lot of people didn't like that match because Jack Perry wasn't really a worthy opponent, at least in some fans' eyes, for Danielson's first title defense. And there might be some people that tune in because they say, oh, they recognize people from WWE, and they go, okay, let me tune in and see what this is about. And then they see stuff like Moxley putting a plastic bag over Bryan Danielson's head. They see the stuff that happens in Swerve versus Hangman, where they're just trying to mercifully unalive each other. And yeah, it was a whole lot to take in for that match. I'll be honest, it was a lot to take in, and yeah, there's. I'm not here to tell you what you should like in wrestling, what you shouldn't like. We all have different tastes in what we want out of our pro wrestling. And yeah, if what we saw at All Out between Hangman and Swerve is not what you want out of out of your wrestling, that is fine. That is fine with me. You consume. You like what you like in wrestling, right? That's on you. You know, Nobody else should be like, "Oh, you should like that because we like it." No, that's okay. If that was too violent for you, that was too much. That crossed the line, and you say, "Hey, I like the earlier stuff like Pac and Will Ospreay, but plastic bag over a head, the attempted murder, the needle into the mouth. Okay, that's a little bit too much. I'm not going to watch this no more. That is fine. You're entitled to your opinion." You know, I feel like that's where like hardcore fans, where hardcore AEW fans would be like, hey, you don't like it, go watch WWE. you know, which again, that is also not a good response because again, just because you don't like it, just because people don't want like certain things in the wrestling doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. But when you're trying to grow your product, when you're struggling to sell out arenas outside the pay-per-views, because again, AEW does such a great job at their pay-per-views. They sell out their pay-per-views. It's just getting people to Dynamite. And when you're trying to get people to Dynamite, when you're trying to get them to TV, essentially the pay-per-views are what's going to make people come to Dynamite. They're going to see that the crowds there at the pay-per-views are having a good time and that they should go to a AEW Dynamite in their area. But when things like that happen, when Hangman Swerve happens, and yeah, it might be a little too much, and you go, you know what? Okay, you know what? I'm done. I'll stick to just WWE. And again, I think there is that fine line, especially for Tony Khan, where he has to go, all right, some people don't like this, which is understandable, but he also has to understand that this might turn people away. And again, when you have empty arenas like AEW has for TV, you don't want to risk losing that audience, or not. Well, risk losing new audience members that might be tuning into AEW for the first time. They might, I said this back around Revolution. I said, when Sting was having his last match, I said, this was the perfect time for AEW. For people tuning in because, hey, they know Sting. They watch Sting in WCW. They're going, okay, I'm going to check this out. This is his last match. I was a fan of his from WCW. I'm going to watch. And I said, for me, I said, this was a great opportunity for AEW, for Tony Khan to grow his audience, to put on a show at Revolution that makes people stick around. And, sadly, that wasn't the case. But, I think you have to do enough to make people want to tune in to find out what happens next. Like, again, John Moxley coming out, he's telling Tony Schiavone, hey, this isn't your company no more, which I don't know if he has his Tonys confused or Tony Schiavone's been secretly booking AEW for the last 5 years. But when he says, this isn't your company no more, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm like, oh, okay, where's this going? And again, he's by himself. He's not, it's like there's no Blackpool Combat Club. And then we saw on Saturday, Blackpool Combat Club turned on Bryan Danielson. So, again, there is that intrigue where you do want to find out why Moxley did what he did. You want to find out why he tried to suffocate Bryan Danielson. You want to find out what he means by this isn't your company no more. But when you see, but also there's that, yeah, I'm intrigued, I want to find out, but that's a little bit too much. And I can see why that would turn people away. And again, you can watch what you want. You know, whatever you want out of your wrestling, that's up to you. But I do think wrestling companies in 2024, I think they're walking a very fine line in between what they can do and what they can't do. Obviously, sticking a needle, a syringe into the mouth of an opponent, suffocating them, having one wrestler suffocate another with a plastic bag. That might be too much for some people, while others will say that, hey, this is what we've been wanting out of our wrestling because WWE has been too PG and we've been waiting for this violence and we've been waiting for stuff like Hangman burning down Swerve's childhood home. And so, yeah, what is too far in professional wrestling in 2024? That is the line that I think AEW has to figure out because, again, they are a young company. So 5 years in, they have to find a way to grow their audience beyond the hardcore fans that are always going to be there, no matter what. So that's great, and you have a fan base that is always going to be there. But they also have to grow beyond that. And when stuff like that happens at All Out, that is going to chase people away from your product. That is not going to make people want to come back and watch. So, at the end of the day, to be fair, I think because of where we are as a society in 2024, where we're stuck trying to find what's too much, too far, oh, that didn't go far enough. It's a very, very thin line at the end of the day. And, to me, we've been clamoring for this type of stuff in our wrestling for years. And now that we got it, now it's too far. And so, where do you stand on all this? Comment below. Let me know, where do you stand on all this? Was it too far? What does define too far in professional wrestling? And if you were a new viewer to AEW and AEW All Out was your first time watching the show, did that make you want to not watch AEW no more? Did it make you want to tune into AEW potentially? So comment below. Let me know what you guys think about this. I've been your host, Money Mike, and as always, I produce weekly wrestling content here on this channel, so hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll be back with more wrestling content later this week, as you've been watching Ringside Cinema. Ringside Cinema, living out the dream. Lights down, time to go. Cheers for heroes we know. Ringside forever bold. Wrestling never gets old.